The Cleveland Browns have suffered their first significant injury of the 2023 season. We're going to get into all that news, how it affects the positional room, all that and more. Your latest Locked On Browns.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Once again, riding solo. G. Bush, we miss you. Heal up. This solo stuff ain't cracked up for what it's supposed to be. So we miss you, G. Heal up soon. As always, for all your Browns content, make sure you are subscribed to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Notifications on when the content drops. You're there to consume it. And of course, likes on the episodes. For all you audio listeners, Locked On Browns always available on your favorite podcast platform for free. We're going to get to some topics here today. Who is quarterback 3? The Browns are nosing around at quarterbacks through their top 30 official visits. We are going to get to the state of the wide receiver room after today's news. But first, foremost, we opened yesterday with an Al Woods and a possibility with the Cleveland Browns. And today we bring the sad news of Browns wide receiver Michael Woods. Michael Woods, second-year wide receiver, has ruptured his Achilles while working out with quarterback Deshaun Watson. You hate to hear this stuff, and you understand the severity of the game. And then what you have to do for maintenance and prep to get yourself ready for an NFL season. Here's Michael Woods doing everything he can. The Browns, Alex Wright, they have made him apart. They made them both apart. Of the YouTube show, have these two going out, learning things, experience things, doing it through a Browns lens. You try, hey, you veteran quarterback who makes a ton of money says, hey, are you available for workouts? Heck yeah, I'm available. So a kid like this who's, doing everything he can, and now is what is a very, very crowded Browns wide receiver room. And for a guy like Michael Woods, the path to making this team in 2023 had become a lot more difficult over the last couple of weeks with the addition of Elijah Moore, with the addition of Marquise Goodwin, and now a kid trying to go the extra mile, doing everything and make this roster. Sadly, suffers, which is one of the more difficult injuries for a skill player. We saw it with Grant Delpit year 2. A lot of it was just developing confidence with the injury and, getting back to the fact that, hey, I think I'm starting to become who I am again. Granted, the path for Grant Delpit to making the roster was certainly a lot easier than it is for a guy like Michael Woods. One was a 2nd-round pick, one was a 6th-round pick. The wide receiver room, and we'll get to this in segment 2, a lot of guys in play there for that wide receiver 6. I don't think they'll keep 7 wide receivers. You signed Mike Ford, who's one of the top gunners in the NFL. So the reps to get maybe special teams opportunities for the Browns from the wide receiver group was not there anyway, because the Browns have invested heavily into special teams this cycle with the new hire of Bubba Ventrone. For Mike Woods, we've kind of gotten to know him here a little bit. Came in, 6th-round pick. Arkansas transfer to Oklahoma to get his name a little bit more on the map. Part of, that wide receiver group where we could really just never find any harmony after Amari Cooper, after Donovan Peoples-Jones. 10 games played last year, 5 receptions, 45 yards, 10 targets. So a little bit of an opportunity given to him, a little bit of opportunity seized, I would say. And he was a guy that was going to be in play here in that room with the rest of those names. But a young man putting in his work, putting in his due diligence, doing everything he can. And then you get news like this. And, this is what's tough. I mean, it's April. The draft in the Browns, another wide receiver visit today as Jalen Hyatt confirmed in today into the building. So where does this put a guy like, Mike Woods going further? I'm actually going to go a little contrarian on this. I think there's a better chance for a guy like Mike Woods to make the Browns wide receiver room in 2024 than maybe there is in 2023. And we'll get to that in a little bit later here in segment 2. Now, it did happen here in April. We're not positive it was April 3rd. We're not positive it was April 4th when the physical injury actually happened, as opposed to when it happened, when it was diagnosed, when it was confirmed. It could have been certainly on Monday. It certainly could have been on Tuesday. But for Mike Woods, there are some instances here where maybe this isn't a season-long thing. Michael Crabtree years ago with the San Francisco 49ers had an injury of the Achilles, and it was during OTAs. He ended up coming back later that year in December. If everybody remembers, a year or two ago, running back Cam Akers from the Los Angeles Rams, and actually during their Super Bowl winning season, Cam Akers was hurt over the summer with his Achilles injury. I don't remember if it was June, July, but probably right before training camp had started. And Cam Akers, crazy enough, actually did come back that year and get some playing time and be somebody who was part of, that late season run for the Los Angeles Rams. There's no dictating at this point. There's no timetable at this point. But for me personally, I feel for a kid like Mike Woods. Here's a guy trying to do everything he can. And knowing that maybe, the odds are, against him as far as, his Cleveland Browns future here for the 2023 season, if he was healthy. Now you're in a lonely spot where, when you're injured, you're just not as much a part of the team. So Mike Woods, heal up, all the best. Obviously the fandom, everybody, thinking about you. So, sadly, some bad news to start off your Locked On Browns today. Mike Woods ruptured Achilles in some workouts with Deshaun Watson. Not what you want at this point in time, certainly. And, with the Browns crowded wide receiver room looking to continue add, we'll see the way this plays out. But we're going to get to the state of the wide receiver room here as we roll on through your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for being along for the ride. Jeff Lloyd driving solo while G. Bush is on the mend. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and three-pointers drained. Look, you guys know I'm a Mets fan. I know you guys all love your Guardians, your Cavaliers. I suggest a same-game parlay. Look, you're going to sit down, put 2 hours and 30 minutes into watching your favorite teams. Why don't you find 3, 4, 5 bets that might not have, very, very winnable odds, but you parlay them all together, you hit on them, put $5, $10 down. You have a chance at a pretty big turnout of an investment on a bet of a game that you were going to watch anyway. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So obviously with the news, Michael Woods, ruptured Achilles tendon, a long road back, still no confirmation, and we won't know for a while if there's even a possibility for Michael Woods to be part of the 2023 season. I did mention, and I'll start with this here before we get to the state of the wide receiver room currently. For Michael Woods, and, this would apply to a guy like Anthony Schwartz, guy like Dalen Baldwin, Jalen Darden. The Browns wide receiver room could possibly be an easier room to be a part of in 2024 than 2023. There's already been a lot of talk that Amari Cooper, maybe 2023 could be his last year here, the way this contract is structured. Donovan Peoples-Jones, to this point, currently, Donovan Peoples-Jones has no future in Cleveland after the 2023 season. Marquise Goodwin, all the word is it's a one-year deal. We still don't have confirmation on that, but a one-year deal to be part of the Cleveland Browns here. So you take those three names out of the fold for 2024, this seems to be a room where you have better odds at making the roster. But where we are at with the 2023 wide receiver room, Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore. For now, Amari Cooper is one. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore. If you guys want to argue 2A, 2B, go ahead and knock yourself out with that. I'm just happy that a guy like Moore comes into here. You have, another slot option with Moore, with Cooper, with David Njoku. You have David Bell now still. I think David Bell is certainly being slept upon at this point in time. Again, when we talked yesterday about the rookie running backs, you talk about David Bell. If David Bell is in a formation and on the field, ideally the coverage, the pressure point, the concern of any defense is going to be every other player on the field. And David Bell, it went okay as a rookie. I'm sure he wished he had the opportunity to produce more. It certainly did not help a rookie like David Bell coming into a situation where you had one quarterback for 11 weeks and then the future of the franchise coming in for the final 6 weeks. So for David Bell, I think we're going to see growth. Think we're going to see David Bell be a part of this room. I think the statistical output for David Bell is going to increase in 2023. You add Marquise Goodwin to this mix. And look, Marquise, we all talk about the 4.27, and that might not be the play speed anymore of a Marquise Goodwin, and that's okay. For me, I think the thing with Marquise Goodwin is more of the guy who's been around winning football, played in a Super Bowl. If Jimmy G hit him, that day could have been a lot different for the San Francisco 49ers. But years in Buffalo, years where he has been part of good teams. So Marquise Goodwin coming in here and, partly bringing veteran leadership, partly working with all these young kids where everything's just so cloudy for them. You've got a Jalen Baldwin. You've got an Anthony Schwartz. You've got a Jalen Darden. All these guys are in this tough spot where they know it's a severe numbers game. And this is where the trickier part even is the Browns, who've already been showing interest in possible draft wide receivers. Jalen Hyatt, Tank Dell is a name that does not seem to want to go away from the Cleveland Browns' interest in people trying to connect the dots there. So now that's even more picked up. And we think the Browns have more draft picks than they probably want to take players in this draft. So are you trying to move those picks to 2024 and the future? Or do the Browns say now with the Michael Woods news, you know what? If we're stuck with a pick, maybe we'll double down and take 2 wide receivers, which makes this even more difficult for these kids who are fighting for their lives as well. We're going to make the case here a little bit. Anthony Schwartz, as you know, for me, guys, you remember it was 2 years ago, 2 months before the draft. I put Anthony Schwartz down as a lock for the Cleveland Browns to draft. They did. For Anthony Schwartz, it's not gone as well. And as crazy as this is, go back to week 1 of the 2021 season. And who was the best wide receiver on the field that day in Kansas City? Anthony Schwartz was the best wide receiver that day for the Cleveland Browns. And it's just never really gotten much better. Had a good Christmas Eve game, scored a touchdown, had a couple of reverses against Green Bay Packers. It's Christmas Day, rather. The one highlight, I would say, in 2022 here, the reverse against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Marquise Goodwin is here, but I think Anthony Schwartz could give you everything Marquise Goodwin could. The question is the relationship, has too much gone back and forth, and where this is just maybe not the best spot for Anthony anymore mentally. Suffered a couple of concussions minimum to this point. We know of at least 2. I love Anthony Schwartz. I'd love for him to, get the opportunity to be a part of this, but you also have to look at, the realistic aspect that maybe Anthony Schwartz is, better off, in another system where he can kind of get a fresh start with that track speed that everybody loves so much. Dalen Baldwin, part of, 2 receptions, 27 yards, part of the, December victory, home victory over the Baltimore Ravens, brings a little bit of an element that nobody else in the room does as far as size, long arms, long legs, every bit of 6'2", could be a nice possession receiver for this team. Problem with that is those type of guys where, athletics aren't the calling call. And you can maybe say, oh, well, he could be a returner in a pinch, or, we could use him on specials in a pinch. Dalen Baldwin certainly doesn't fall into that. Jalen Darden, however, and already has, a repertoire and already has a resume under his belt to this point of, being an asset in the return game. Certainly a guy that can do some things from the slot, your jet sweeps, reverses, jet sweeps, jet sweep handoffs, jet sweep motion, all these type of things you can do, which is always a little eye candy to take the, attention from the defense off of, what really might be going on as far as what you're trying to plan here on the offensive side of the ball. So it certainly murkies things a little bit. The guys in-house right now who are vying for that last wide receiver spot, obviously the odds get a little better for Michael Woods. Tremendous, terrible blow. But, getting stashed on IR, hopefully going to stick around with a team where now you have a reputation with the Browns where they feel you are a good young man. They feel you're trying to do everything you can to succeed. They can stash you on IR, and maybe there's a better opportunity for you in 2024 than there was here to make this roster in 2023. So we'll see the way it all plays out. We're going to switch it up here. We are going to get to segment 3. The Cleveland Browns are nosing around the quarterback market. Obviously, they're not high-ended on it, but, already with Josh Dobbs in the fold, already with Kellen Mond on the roster. We're going to get to that. Continue here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Make sure, if you were looking for the best Cleveland Browns content, you are subscribed to the Locked On Browns YouTube page. Notifications on. Throw some likes on the episodes. And for all you audio listeners, your favorite podcast platform has us every day and for free. So, word broke early today. Now, we're recording here Tuesday afternoon. The Browns are bringing in Houston Cougar quarterback Clayton Tune for an official visit. This comes off of the news today as well that Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, that's what you're going to be. You got 3 names. We got to get you some initials, man. They want us in and out here. They don't want these shows to lagger. So, DTR out of UCLA, an extensive playing background. Played all 4 years at UCLA. Played in a NFL offense at UCLA. Now it's interesting here for the Browns because Clayton Tune is a guy that I think you probably could get with the 6th round pick. Now Dorian Thompson Robinson, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Yes, maybe very early 4th round he could be had. But when guys have this level of experience and they have this extensive background in college, he's got good legs. Now, we got to see him at the Combine. He was throwing with the C.J. Stroud group. He was throwing with the Anthony Richardson group. And if you remember, we did a show then with Pete Smith, and he actually looked like the better thrower at the time than Anthony Richardson. Granted, C.J. Stroud was on fire that day, and you saw everything. But DTR himself looked like the better thrower that day than Anthony Richardson. Is he going to get drafted in the same range? Is there any chance he's going to get drafted higher? Zip, zero, zilch. But, and you go back in the day, and I know some of the things get antiquated over the years, but Bill Parcells always had this blueprint for quarterbacks, X amount of years as a starter, X amount of games played, X amount of games won. Now, I don't know where he fits, with games won under that Parcells sheet, but as far as years started at the position, box checked. As far as overall games played, box checked. for Dorian Thompson Robinson. That's why we're going with DTR, man. Too many names. So now you look at the way the Browns QB room is constructed. We all know QB1 is here, and he is here for the entire season. Josh Dobbs brought back. Some of this is because Josh Dobbs can be a mental bounce back guy for Deshaun Watson. They both train with the same guy. They're both now involved in the same offense. And for Josh Dobbs, he is probably still ahead of the curve than Deshaun Watson as far as knowing this Coach Stefanski offense, even with the tweaks that are coming. So a good friend, a good relationship. You always want somebody you can bounce back off of as far as, hey, they're saying this. Are you seeing this? Because the coaches are telling me this, and am I missing this? Help me out here. So it's good to have that type of relationship, certainly, with your backup quarterback. Kellen Mond, and look, the information I get is limited. I admit it. You never see me run to Twitter and say source, It's, and even still, because some of the information I get, it's, hey, please don't share it. My job is not to break news. My job is to cover the Cleveland Browns here for the Locked On Browns podcast. But what I have been told is everybody likes Kellen Mond. Well, Kellen Mond has never taken a preseason snap for the Cleveland Browns. He was brought in final cutdowns on waivers from the Minnesota Vikings. So we have never seen him take a rep for the Cleveland Browns. We have never seen him take a rep in a Kevin Stefanski offense. So the fact that they could like Kellen Mond might not mean jack, kids. I mean, truly. And the fact that you are showing interest in quarterbacks to bring in here for QB3 in Clayton Tune, in DTR. And I'm going to go back to this. And the question is here, you look at what happened to the San Francisco 49ers last year and getting in a position where here you are, all of a sudden an NFC championship game, and you're playing QB4. Granted, that is the absolute bottom of the barrel. And this never, ever happens that teams end up in that situation. But maybe it causes some teams to say, you know what? We're not valuing QB number 3 enough. And even though QB number 3 is barely going to dress, and hopefully that is our plan, is that he never, ever even dresses for games. We've got to look at what happened to the San Francisco 49ers and say, you want to know what? If we can upgrade our QB3, if we can get the best quarterbacks we can in our system, we have to do that, because you want to know what? You could end up where, you got stuck with the banana in the tailpipe, and now all of a sudden you're in the NFC Championship game, AFC Championship game, you're starting your third string quarterback, and you're one hit away from a fourth string quarterback. So for the Browns, it is never a wasted effort. It is always about doing your due diligence. So that is why the Browns have interest in the draft QB market. And when you have guys who played a ton of football in Tune, in DTR, they're not necessarily going to shy away from being put in. That's one of the reasons Brock Purdy, God bless him, and all to his credit, played so well. The moment was never big. He played a lot of football. He was ready to go. So the Browns are looking at these two guys and saying, hey, if we could possibly get in a situation like that. And the other thing is, if the Browns can't move on from some of these picks that they have, that they probably have no intention of really taking players this year and hopefully trying to move that capital. Well, if we can upgrade quarterback 3, with a day 3 draft choice, we absolutely have to consider it. So we've gotten to some things here today. Michael Woods, obviously the news is terrible. Ruptured Achilles tendon during workouts with Deshaun Watson. You hate to hear it. Heart's out again. Mike Woods, all the best. The Browns, also the state of the wide receiver room. A lot of guys fighting it out for wide receiver 6. For those guys, it got a little easier. But did this increase the odds that the Cleveland Browns might now draft 2 wide receivers, which makes things a little bit different? And of course, third segment here, who is quarterback 3? Because the Cleveland Browns are showing a ton of interest in the draft quarterbacks here in 2023. I am Jeff Lloyd at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. The show Locked On Browns at Locked On Browns. Follow back account, as everybody knows, on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you know notifications on. Throw likes on the episodes for the audio listeners. Always available, always free on your favorite podcast app. So when you are done making Locked On Browns your first listen, go ahead, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. Joe Marino, Kyle Krabs, good friends of mine. I've known both these guys over a decade. They do incredible work. They take you through everything: draft, free agency, roster breakdown, everything. The show is fantastic. It's 5 days a week as well. So make sure you are checking that out. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.